As per usual, I like to start out with just a little bit of quiet time, just getting ourselves in the present moment, and then setting the motivation for our time today. So let's just take a few minutes, uh, sitting straight in your seat, spine straight, and getting your mind into neutral by focusing on your breath. Placing it at the tip of your nostrils where the breath is coming in and going out. And now just take a minute to imagine what it would be like not to have any mental afflictions whatsoever. No anger, no jealousy, no grasping, no problems. And then imagine what it would be like if we had ultimate compassion and love for every living being without any discrimination. And this is really why we're here. That's why we're here tonight. We want to develop that great love and compassion for all living beings. We want to remove all of our own obstacles, obscurations, all of our mental afflictions that cause suffering for ourselves and others. And whatever we call it, if we achieve those two things, then we have reached our highest potential and we can really help every other living being. And so, with that in mind as our motivation for being here, set your mind strongly to determine to reach those goals, to try very hard to reach those goals. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and join us in this virtual space. So, last week we spent a little bit of time talking about and forgive me, I'm going to change my glasses. I just realized I've got the wrong pair on. Um, we spent a little bit of time talking about some of the ways that karma ripens, specifically in relation to acts of our body, so killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. And I thought, and forgive me, wow, time to go and get them checked. I'm really sorry. I've been in front of my computer all day long today. Um, I'm like, this doesn't seem right. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about how karma ripens in regards to acts of speech and then, mind, the other ways that we make karma, the other two of the three doors. But before I get started with that, and there's some other things I wanted to talk about, I thought I would open it up in case there were any lingering, I don't know, questions or points of discussion from last time. I just wanted to maybe start with that. And if there's nothing, that's okay. But I just want to provide enough space. Does anyone have any questions or comments or anything from last week? Yes, Robert.
Okay. Got to meet Rubina this weekend, and she was
Oh,
talking about
yay.
karma. Yeah, that was nerve wracking. Uh, I really enjoyed it. So I'm still kind of working out karma and karma imprints because it seems like it's kind of hard to tell the difference. The only thing I can seem to think is karmic imprints create your personality, and it can turn into a karma seed, maybe. But for the most part, that's the separation. It's not a complete karmatic action. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's
So we use, karma is just raw karma is movement of mind. And the imprint is what actually kind of continues. So you can imagine, you have a thought or even a full karmic action, right? A full deed, with the object, the intention, you succeed and you're happy afterwards. That creates a karmic imprint that stays with your mental continuum and grow, that's where you get the momentum from. So, and then what's interesting is because we are not omniscient, well, a karma ripens, but we are always at that juncture between a karma ripening and creating karma, right? So, right? So, and we talk about one of the ways it ripens is a habit, right? So you have a habit and then you take an action, right? And so it is both, the result of a former imprint, and it is part of a new karma that you're creating. I don't know if that's really the nature of your question, but is that where you're struggling to differentiate the two?
yes, maybe. It seems like they're all kind of connected. Last week, my understanding of karma is what I do now, what I think now will come intuition soon or later. But with talking with Rabina, she was saying most karma that you're really going to see is from past.
Yes.
And current may occur, but there has to be, I don't know the better words, energy to it. It has to be quite strong. Otherwise, it's going to take till next time. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That's actually one of the things we'll talk about tonight because it's come up a few times, just this question of when is it going to ripen? Like, how do you get something to ripen faster, right? Um, so so it is karma is movement of mind. It is what you're doing, and it puts those karmic imprints on your mind. So the life that we're living today is not a life that was created yesterday. This week didn't come from last week, even though, and this sounds really simplistic, but this is like a fundamental truth. So or we could go back because maybe we don't plan week to week. But imagine last year, you might have been looking forward and thinking, where am I going to be next year? And kind of planning your life. That's an illusion. the life I have today didn't come from plans from last year or last week or last month. It came from these imprints that have ripened over countless lifetimes. And then we meet the right causes and conditions for them to kind of percolate up like some kind of like a bingo game almost. Like those seeds start popping. But we've amassed so many. We have this huge storehouse of them. And all of the different actions. The fact that we have this, what we call a precious human rebirth, is a wonderful opportunity because we can learn these things and then we can start to actually address them, which is a little bit of what at some point like I want to get into. And I think I want to be able to do that tonight because I think it'll be really helpful. But I mean, that's the long and short of it. We are the creators of karma. You can almost think that I, I used to have friends who would say, "Oh, thank Joe, for anything that's happening right in our lives." The guy with the last owner of this mental continuum, the last
Mm.
label that was placed upon this mental continuum. For everything that's going right, we can thank them. We can say, thank you because this is courtesy of whoever, must have been incredibly generous, must have been incredibly kind. Like the precious human rebirth is incredibly rare. And I think even having had teachings on it, I think we really can't fathom, what does it mean to have had countless lifetimes from beginningless time? And here we are talking about, learning about the mechanism to get out of this cycle, the liberation thrust in the palm of our hands, truly,
Mhm.
is what we're getting. And so it's really hard to fathom like this countless lifetimes, but it was someone else, a different label on, and that's what we are. Like we're a label on this, mental continuum that is eternal. And that we are like trapped in a phone booth, essentially, a little snapshot in time. And this is like, and the label that gets put on this one is, Robert or Bonnie, this short period of time. But the lives that we're living, the habits that we have, the things that we're attracted to, whether or not, the extent to which we have peace, harmony, all of these things, the fact that we're human, are coming from, undoubtedly coming from the deeds that were done by another label on this
Mhm.
mental continuum. And we can't really say another sentient being, although it almost feels that way. You know, it's interesting. And the lamas will say, if you want to know what you did in your past life, if you want to know, instead of going to like a past life regressionist and finding out we were all Cleopatra, which, probably we all were, but just take a look at like what's my life like today? And it tells us everything we need to know about, you know, last life, all the information that we need, right? It's almost like not helpful to get too much detail. I say that, but who knows? Maybe it would be helpful. Um, and then conversely, all the things I'm doing today, realistically, are going to be setting up a different label of this mental continuum, setting them up for either something wonderful or something horrible. And, it is, for all intent and purpose, we could say it's another being, but it's us. In the same way, and I think it's not totally dissimilar to, who we were at 10 years old and who we are now. You can't say it's the same person. I mean, it is the same label. Uh, if we're getting in, really being accurate, we could say, okay, it's the same mental continuum. And so in that sense, that's the same, that's the carrier. And these imprints stay with that mental continuum and they build momentum, and that's why they grow. Uh, it's not one for one. It's not an eye for an eye. It's like countless eons of blindness for an eye. That kind of that's the kind of exchange that we're talking about. And again, I'm not sure that that really answers your question or provides more context, but I think hopefully it's a little bit helpful in terms of thinking about all this stuff. When we talked about what our environment would be like if we're killing, in a few minutes I'll chat and it's quicker, because now we sort of have some of the foundations. Like we know that a ripened karma, negative karma, or just a ripened karma, I mean, it ripens as a rebirth. Like, am I an animal? Am I a hungry ghost? Am I a human being? That's the ripening, of a karma, the what they call ripened result. And then a corresponding habit that is the same for all karmas, mental and physical. And then kind of what our environment is like, that's a little bit more detailed. Um, and 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 the experiences, the corresponding experiences that we have. That's a little bit more detailed. Yes, Deshe, please.
Can you hear me okay?
I
Hello?
It's a little quiet, but I'll turn up my volume. Could be me.
Okay. All right. So when we're talking about a precious human rebirth, part of my thing is, if it's such a precious thing, how did I happen to accomplish it? And I get the karmic stream, but it's still like if it's such an unusual accomplishment, how do we have 8 billion people on the planet or whatever, you
Well,
know?
8 billion,
And
yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
then as you're looking at all these people who have created the karma to actually land here, and then you see the constant strife going on, the interpersonal constant strife. And so then I'm like, okay. And then you're trying to create the causes to be able to continue on your path. And that the best vehicle for this, um, as far as my interpretation of the teachings, is
Mhm.
that our best vehicle is another precious human life until we can
Yes.
make it, past that. But I do, even after studying for 20 plus years or whatever, this is the part that still kind of continues to boggle my mind as
It's
to
my
how to see this.
it's mind-boggling. Whenever we talk about, countless lifetimes and countless planets. And there's a little bit of this idea now that there's like parallel, um what do they call it? Like parallel reality is happening all at once. That kind of
Yeah,
starts to touch on it.
tangible.
That, yeah, that idea. But there's countless planets. The idea of time that we see as such a linear thing, it's sort of like all times are happening at once, past, present, and future. These are mental constructs. Like they're not real, like obstacles, like to a Buddha, for example. That's why omniscience is not a problem, because that past, present, and future is a context, a contextual way of talking about something that has no substance. Like there is no, this is why we can have theory of relativity and potentially time travel, even though we don't have it, right? And I don't know if that makes it easier to think of, but I'm sure you've heard over the course of the years, the analogy that they always give is, a giant sea turtle who's been like swimming around in the oceans, for eons and
Indeed.
eons. And then there's a tiny little yolk in the middle of the ocean. And then one time he pops his head through it, just randomly swimming around. That's the rarity of this life.
Not only that, but it's gold, which should have sunk.
Yeah. But how does that happen?
How does
And
that
I
happen?
think
Yes.
what's kind of inspirational is it must happen because of some tiny little act of kindness or goodness, some moment of volition where we, that place where we could have had a choice, a small act of patience or generosity that then gains momentum. But it isn't a singular act. This is the thing. To get this human body, we must have and we do have, um, boatloads, bags full of karmic seeds that are very, very good. We have we're always talking about the negative things that we must have done. And we focus on that because that's the problem that we want to solve for. That's what we want to get rid of. We want to stop creating that. We want to purify all that stuff. But we have also done amazing things. We have served sentient beings. We've given up our lives. I mean, actually, if you really contemplate what we must have done to get here, it's overwhelming. It's really inspiring. I mean, this feeling of like incredible gratitude and good fortune. Um, but it's the past and future lives and the karma. These are things that are, we're not seeing directly. So it's an act of faith and not always easy. But I like to say, okay, I mean, I can even imagine, and this is why I think there's a temptation now to sort of try to secularize everything and just make it like it's not literal. It's not literally a human life, but that's not what scripture says. But it's easier for us to relate to sometimes. Just like, okay, it's rare to have just the leisure and fortune that we have. To even have, there's this technology like, oh, maybe we can't, for whatever reason, go to a physical place. It's too far away. Like, oh, look at what we have. I mean, if you think about the, and it's a mixed bag because at the time of the Buddha, uh, there were people who were with the Buddha. So that's really good karma, right? So they're like with the Buddha, they're getting teachings from the Buddha. But there have been a lot of amazing Buddhist saints, and they have had to walk, you have all these stories. They're walking these great distances and the sacrifice they would make to get teachings. And we have this. I mean, it's kind of amazing. Like, how precious is this opportunity that we have? And then I think even if we can't wrap our minds totally around that, if just to contemplate that there are beings, if we have faith that there are beings who have overcome their mental affliction and they have laid out a path for us, then that precious human rebirth, that incredible opportunity becomes really obvious. Like, okay, if I could do that, if I could learn some of that, um, you know, it, to not spend the time trying to do this would be like, and again, it's another analogy, you're on a ship, you land, you go to an island that is just filled with treasure and jewels and, gold, whatever. And then you just say, oh, well, I'll come back next week and pick some of this up. Like we would be, collecting it, filling the boat as much as we could in our pockets with all of that. And so having that attitude about Dharma, this is an opportunity that we have. And again, I don't know that it probably doesn't satisfy it, but I think it's because it's just hard to get our minds wrapped around, what does it mean to have countless lives? And what must we have done? And it must have been pretty doggone amazing, frankly, for us to be here. And the problem is that, so we have done some amazing things, or we wouldn't have this life, but we've also done some really terrible things, anything we could think of. Um, and what's precious about this is that we can actually address those things now. We have a chance to do that because in our karmic handbags, we have not only whatever precious good deeds brought us here, but we have a lot of the negative stuff as well. So, maybe it's not a bad thing when I feel like it's a totally unsatisfactory answer. But I hope that's okay. Anybody else have any comments or thoughts? And even related to this, I'm just a practitioner myself, I'm kind of offering my thoughts, but I hear you. It's kind of overwhelming to think of, this endless mental continuum. Okay, so moving along, and I won't take a whole lot of time, just chatting a little bit about, sorry, getting pinged, some of the ways that, so we said ripened is like how we take take birth, rebirth, and the corresponding habit is easy. In regards to speech, so talking about lying, how does that manifest in our environment? So our work doesn't get the results that we want. So fruitless endeavors, fruitless labor, and then we're surrounded by deceptive people. That would be lying. Divisive speech. We live in inhospitable places. And think of it logically, it even makes sense. Like, because when we're creating divisiveness, like it's inhospitable. We're trying to create something unpleasant, drawing people apart from each other. Uh, and then we would be surrounded by enemies because that's sort of what we're setting up and creating. Harsh speech, uh, we would be in an environment that has rough ground, thorny bushes, sharp rocks, and just scary places, places that are frightening. And then idle speech, plants wouldn't ripen, and there'd be no place to relax, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what the environment is like. Um, and then, you know, with the mind moving along. So again, ripen, born in one of the lower realms, corresponding experiences, being overcome with uh, craving, desire, dislike, ignorance, and then the environment, living someplace where everything gets worse and worse, so where things appear to decline. Um, a place where there's war, illness, dangerous people, animals, a place where pain is considered pleasure, uh, a place where the Dharma has been degenerated or lost, and then where filthy things are considered good. So that, lack of morality in the place where we live. Um, and sorry, so I talked about the corresponding environment for speech, and I have a note. I didn't talk about the experience. So, but again, they're very similar. If you lie, then people discredit you or they don't believe you. Divisive speech, you'll lose your own friends and companions. Harsh speech, you'll hear unpleasant things. Idle speech, you'll be ignored. I mean, the nice thing about speech is it seems like we can see it in action in this life. Uh, we're not. It's from previous seeds, but it feels like we can see it in this life. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what kind of factors help karmas to ripen faster, because that's been a little bit of a focus. How do we know, right? They can ripen in this life, they can ripen in the next life, or they can ripen in any future life. So how do we what are the karmic accelerators? So, and I think, Robert, you had mentioned Venerable Robina talking about, that intensity of emotion. So that's one of the primary things, like having, you know, intense emotion, strong motivation or intention. That's one of the ways that accelerates karma. It doesn't necessarily mean this life or next life, but it is an accelerator. It's like a fertilizer, I guess you could say. The second thing is a special object that you're directing your activities toward. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but what makes an object special, but you can think of like your parents, an arhat, your guru, an arya, a bodhisattva, like those kinds of beings are special objects. Um, the doing something continually, right? Because you just have more, like it makes it more likely to ripen quicker, because that habit, I mean, it's a wheel, right? We are in like the cycle of samsara because we have this habit. So, continually doing something gives it power to ripen sooner. Killing your mother or father. And this is a little bit related to the second one, which is, a special object. They are a special object because they provided the raw materials for this precious human rebirth. They provided the essential elements for us to have this life during which we have an opportunity to achieve Buddhahood. So they are high holy objects for us, very potent objects. So those are the like karmic accelerators, you could say, for four kinds of things that make karma ripen faster. And then there's two special factors, and this is also related. For something to ripen in this life, it would be done towards our parents, Buddha, Sangha, like one of those powerful objects. And then again, extraordinary motivation, very powerful emotion and extraordinary motivation. And those are the special factors that could have something ripen in this life. So not only are they karmic accelerators, but those are the things that could have something ripen in this life, here and now. And you may have heard about the 5 heinous actions. It's good. We're not going to do them in this life, but it's good to know what they are. And because again, sort of like an onion, peeling away an onion as we're working on our hearts and minds, like knowing what these heinous things are, like we can start to go out from there, like getting far. What we want is our behavior, our thoughts, our words, our actions to get farther and farther away from these things, right? So the first one, and these 5 heinous actions, I mean, they will land you in your next rebirth. They will land you in what they call a hell realm. Hell, from a Buddhist perspective, is not a place that someone else sends us. It's a place that we send ourselves, and it's not permanent, but it would feel like it. I mean, you can imagine, like, we all have those days that just drag on, right? If you're having a great time, you're surrounded by family and friends, everything is great. Time goes so quickly. When we're really suffering, it seems to like completely slow down. So it hells don't last forever, but they undoubtedly feel like they do. And there's lots of different kinds of hells. But the 5 immediate actions, the 5 heinous actions that will result in an immediate rebirth in hell if we don't purify them, that's important to note, is killing your mother, killing your father, killing an arhat, creating a schism in the Sangha. Now we should know that in order to create a schism in the Sangha, we would have to be fully ordained monks and we'd have to be living in the time of Gautama Buddha. So we're not even eligible for that heinous action. But again, good to know because, there's a flavor there that we would want to be aware of and conscientious about. And then drawing blood from a Buddha with malice. So those are the 5 things that could land us in hell. And then I'll stop there in case there's any questions or comments. I think that's pretty straightforward, but okay. And that, so kind of going back to, and the 5 heinous actions are all related to these special objects. So it's good to talk about what makes an object special, right? Because so when especially when we're planning our good deeds, right? Like we can do good deeds, and we do hopefully do good deeds, but we want to, because these accelerators work in a positive, not just a negative. So it's not just that the intensity of emotion and whether or not you have a habit doing it, and okay, the killing the mother and father, we're just not going to do that in this life. We've all agreed. And the special object, those accelerators don't just work for negative karmas, they work for positive karmas. So it's really good, useful to know what makes an object special. So the first thing is they're a higher form of life than we are. What does that mean? It means they're more likely to be able to reach enlightenment. So this doesn't mean not to do good deeds towards all living beings, but these are just some ideas, So a higher form of life. So actually doing a good deed towards a human rather than towards an animal is a little bit more virtuous. or I can't say it's more virtuous, that it is, they are considered more of a special object because they may actually be able to achieve enlightenment in this life. Doesn't mean not to be kind to animals. There's also that whole thing of, if you're being kind to an animal or a lesser being, and lesser meaning not, because they all have the same mental continuum that we do, right? There's nothing from a quality perspective about, we just happen to be having this experience right now. And the next life we could be an animal. So it's not that we're better than them. It's that we're in a better position to be able to follow the path and purify things. That's all. So, even saying higher form of life, it doesn't sound great, but it's just a practical reality. Like there's an opportunity here. And so, there's a real chance that they can actually achieve some realization in this life and do some real positive good deeds. Animals are essentially acting out of instinct, which is why it's harder to create good karma as an animal. Certainly they can, and you see it, but it's just more difficult for them because they're acting out of instinct. So, so so all that to say, I mean, I really want to do a big disclaimer because, all the practitioners, all the lamas I know are incredibly kind to animals, and it's incredibly important, these lesser forms of life. And there's also something about the purity of an action potentially with a being or a creature that can't do anything for us, right? It can be sometimes more of a pure act of generosity. So I don't think I need to make that disclaimer, but I just want to be clear when we say, lesser form of life, higher form of life. Um, and then it brings me to number two. So then this may also include animals. They're in a serious state of suffering. So either they're a higher form of life, that's one, or they're in some serious state of suffering. So, you've got two people who have a problem. One of them, it's life threatening. You wouldn't even have to think of it, right? Like, what would the priority be? So, helping those beings who appear to be in greater suffering is another thing that makes an object special. The nature of their suffering, the depth of their suffering, apparently to us. Um, the third thing is they've given us assistance. So we do have a karmic debt. So this is where, parents are one of the reasons why they're considered this precious object is they have given us the ultimate. They've given us the ingredients for this precious human rebirth. You could also say our lamas, our teachers, because they have tried to share the Dharma with us, or they have shared the Dharma with us. So, or our Vajra or Sangha brothers and sisters who, have been on the path with us, working with us to kind of help us with our own mental afflictions. They're really providing assistance to us. So we owe them a debt. And so actions done in the positive and the negative towards them are heavier. And then the last one is, they possess high spiritual qualities. So this would be, a Buddha, your lamas, an arhat, a bodhisattva, an arya. Obviously, when we talk about higher forms of life, we can think of them in that way as well. So those are the four things that make an object special in terms of karma. So I'll stop there. And maybe I said too much about animals and other forms of life, but I've just experienced where, it can sound harsh and people sometimes bristle when we say, that being a human is a higher form of life. Uh, there, it's just because we have this opportunity. Again, we have been animals. We potentially could be animals in the future. It's just the label and the experience on this mental continuum that we're currently experiencing. I'm going to pause because I think there must be no comments, no questions. Okay. All right. So, I guess what I'd like to get into then are what we call four opponent powers, and some of you may already be familiar. And really, what I'd like to do after we sort of talk about it a little bit is do a little meditation on it. So, four opponent powers are the ways that we, instead of pouring fertilizer, like you rejoice in something, you're pouring this fertilizer on, you're supercharging something. Uh, Conversely, there's things that we can do to kind of put weed killer on the weeds, which is exactly what we want to do. So regret is number one. And regret here, from a Buddhist perspective, and I think I may have said this before, but it's not guilt. Totally different kind of thing. It's really it's utilitarian. It's like, oh, this is going to cause suffering, so I regret doing this. I'm going to take a remedy. That regret is the same kind of regret you'd be feeling if you made a mistake that, I don't know, endangered your life. You accidentally drank poison. You wouldn't berate yourself. You wouldn't think, oh, I'm a terrible person. That's not constructive. Um, in fact, there's two things that seem have a flavor similar to guilt that are actually really good karmas. One is consideration and shame. So consideration is, thinking about what kind of, and this is slightly off topic, but not really, thinking about the influence that you might have on another living being, on another person, say. And so I won't do this bad deed in front of, parents do it all the time. Maybe they have a bad habit. They, I don't know, they smoke, they do something that, they think this is harmful. I don't want to harm my children, so I'm not going to do this in front of them. So even though they have this problem, they have this consideration. They don't want to be a bad influence. And so they don't do, for whatever period of time, they abstain from some negativity. So that kind of consideration, when we have that, that's a healthy, that's a healthy thought. That's a good karma, to have that. So obviously, it can sometimes become involved with, pretense. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is like genuinely, just not wanting to discourage someone else. Like, oh, I've been practicing for 30 years and I should be better than this. So I'm not gonna say this thing about this other person, because I would be being a bad influence. That's not the kind of example I want to be. So that's a really good karma. And then the other thing is shame. But here we're not talking about, like, often when we say shame, it's Game of Thrones kind of shame. It's I don't see, you're all probably better than me and don't even know what that reference is, but I've watched too much TV, clearly. But it's that kind of I'm a terrible person shame. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is my ideal, who I want to be, how I want to show up in the world. That I don't want to see myself doing these actions. It's just that feeling of like, that's not aligned with who I want to be. And that's a really different, so different than I'm not a good person. I'm not a good person. We can't do anything with that. I aspire to be something. I'm not this today, but I aspire to this, and therefore I don't want to do these actions. Or I did these actions and I feel regret and shame. This is not how I want to see myself behaving. So I know these things are bad for me. I know that I believe uh, that these things will create the causes of suffering for me. So I regret them. And having that firm regret for negative things that we've done, and then do the four powers and then let it go. Right? Don't ruminate. Don't meditate on it. Right? Just clean it. So the first thing is regret. The second step is sometimes called reliance, but it's really refuge. So those are one and the same, right? I'm relying on Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Like I'm relying on the truth of emptiness and karma. Um, and so because of that, Actually, because of that, I have the regret. And because of that reliance, I'm going to do something. So the third thing is remedy. So what is a remedy? Some kind of makeup activity. Um, Easy ones, and this is interesting, like even Buddhists aren't the only ones. We have this, Catholics have this idea too of like, doing something to make up, right? Five Hail Marys and three Our Fathers or whatever the priest tells you to do. But it's sort of a good thing. I want to do some kind of makeup activity. I've planted this negative thing. Now I want to plant something positive. So a remedy could be, doing Vajrasattva mantras or visualization. It could be making offerings. It could be, just a host of virtuous activity. It's really nice if it can be also, some action opposite of what we did. So if I did something that was really selfish, or if I stole, then maybe some act of generosity, making an offering would be like an appropriate kind of remedy. Um, but we want to make sure, and sometimes an apology is a remedy. And I will talk more about that. But let me get through the list and then we'll kind of talk a little bit. And then the last thing is resolve. So making some kind of resolution that I'm not going to engage in X. Now, we have to be really careful here because we have deep karmic pockets and countless lives of habits. So we're setting ourselves up for something, for failure, if we resolve never again to do something that we have a habit of doing. So, obviously, if we did a big thing, and I'll just throw like we had an abortion or we stole something, did some kind of like, I don't know, major theft, something big that we don't have a habit of and we never really have to do it again, then obviously then we can have resolve that I will never do that again in this lifetime. Some things we can do that very easily. Other things, the real problems, right? The low level radiation, the constant stuff, um, we don't want to add lying to the mix, right? And lying to ourselves. And sometimes we can very genuinely want to never repeat it again. But this is where self-knowledge is so critical. Make resolve, if you are a person who is inclined to anger, then just resolve that you're going to really watch your mind for the next hour. You decide what is an accomplishment, what is something that I can actually achieve, and do that, and then be happy about it. Make that resolution, and then make a stretch. I resolve X that I know I can do, and then I resolve to try to stretch a little, right? Like the idea as we're practicing is to increase our capacity in, frankly, in all things virtuous. And especially new Buddhists, often we get so excited, inspired, and happy, and we just want to like save the world, right? But that might not be sustainable. Like those big actions, we may not be able to sustain doing that every single day. It's a marathon. So like just being gentle, Master Shantideva, it's carrots and potatoes. It's that incremental, small things that we do that are so incredibly powerful because karma grows. So, resolve in a way that can be a stretch goal for us. I resolve to try to be more patient, or to try to be more selfless, or to work, really working on my anger, or working on my miserliness, whatever that is. And we're all so unique. We really, and part of this is we want to really know our own psychology. Um, Being really honest with ourselves about what our shortcomings are, so that when we are doing a resolution, it's something that we can actually adhere to. And then, so kind of talking about remedies, going back a little bit. So those are the four powers. Um, when you think about a remedy, sometimes an apology is huge and can be huge. But also we have to know, this is again knowing our own psychology, Um, if there's disharmony between me and someone else, and I can take ownership of that, it, actually, well, let's go back even further. Can I take ownership? So I'm having a problem with someone today. Uh, did I create that? Yeah, please, Robert.
Okay. I don't know if I'm setting myself up here. So my
Please set
understanding,
yourself up.
all right, here we go. I'm going to crash. My understanding now is you, the thing that's happening is karma that's come from before. What you're seeing is ripening, right? Same time, you can create another imprint, create another karma, but we're still living in samsara. You still have to do an act and make your best attempt at it to adjust it, right? To make
Yes.
amends. That's all I
Yeah.
got.
Yeah. No, no, that's good. So it's funny that you brought up Venerable Rabina because years ago I had an issue. I was running a Dharma center in Austin, and there was just, it seemed like there was just a person who was incredibly challenging. And I felt like I was, doing everything that I could to be helpful, in this center. And it was just always a problem. There was always some kind of a conflict with this person. And I didn't feel like I was doing anything in this life, in this situation, to create that, right? But I'm a Buddhist, so I'm talking to Venerable Rabina, who also had a relationship with this person. And Rabina is like, so have you done the four powers, Bonnie? You know how she is, right? She's like, darling, have you done the four powers? And I'm like, yeah, of course I've done the four powers. And that was my answer to her in the moment. Like, of course I've done the four powers. I'm doing everything. I'm doing everything I can do. And then after the conversation, I really thought about it. I was not doing one of the four powers very well, and it was the regret, because I really didn't believe or see that I had created the causes for the situation. So yes, I was doing oh, I regret whatever I've done to cause this. I was doing a very tacit, in words only. It's like, may all sentient beings, sometimes all sentient beings, and I think we all have those moments where it's like a nameless, faceless blob. Then you have the inspired moments where all sentient beings, it's like fleshed out. You can feel them and you really want to help them, right? So my regret was at that level of like the nameless, faceless, all sentient beings. It was flavorless. It was it was nothing. It was words only. And yeah, thank you, Venerable Ruby. A couple times she set me straight. I never loved it when it was happening, but she set me straight a couple times, and this was one of them. I don't know if I even ever told her, but afterwards, then I really sat down, and this is where again, this beginningless time and this precious human rebirth, hard to get our heads wrapped around it, but I really sat down and I thought, you know, come on, Bon, have I been, even in this life, maybe not with this person directly right now, but oh my goodness, have I ever created the causes for divisiveness? Absolutely. And then I really dug in, like in this life, how many divisive thoughts have I had? How many divisive comments have I made? How many little things have I done? Now really think about it. What so I have a habit. I have this low level habit of doing this, and I'm seeing it ripening in my world. It's proof. The fact that I'm seeing it is proof that I created the causes. That was really what I was setting you up for. Like, have I created the causes? And I was thinking like I haven't created this. At the core of my being, I was feeling I didn't create this. I shouldn't be experiencing this. And that was the problem. So I really did. I really did a deep dive and a meditation on regret and everything I understand about karma. I mean, my infantile, even today, infantile understanding, you know, but everything I understand about karma, then I must have created this. And now here it is ripening. Okay, thank God. Thank the Buddha. Now I have an opportunity. Now I can purify this. First of all, by not developing like anger, so many ways, right? Doing the four powers, but not developing anger towards this person, owning my own stuff, um, letting this ripen upon me and saying, okay, let this, it does feel like I'm really trying hard, but I know I've created the causes and I regret it and you can regret it because when you don't like something, when I don't like something, I regret that that's happening to me. That's what we can always regret. We can strongly regret this is happening to me. Oh, I don't like this, right? It's that ownership, it's that connecting the dots. And so I went really deep with the regret. And then and that and it's interesting when you're doing the four powers, it's like they just fall into each other. Like from that, then immediately there's refuge, strong refuge, a strong, even stronger feeling of refuge and then a desire to do some kind of remediation. And frankly, the meditation on the regret, all of the stuff I was doing was part and parcel of that remedy. It was part of the remedy. Not the only part, but it was part of the remedy. And then resolving, to first of all, resolving to like take this on and and use it as an indicator that I have something big to work on in terms of divisive speech and divisive behavior. And I will tell you that when I did that, almost miraculously, the situation shifted. And then I'll tell you 6 months later, it shifted back. But there was that like immediate qualitative, we don't always get that. We don't always get that. And, it probably came from some other time. But at least it felt like it was coming from that. And it was it was really a strong four powers. So, this is the good news that we can clean up things. In our mental continuum. We don't have to be racked with guilt. And we can clean up things that we haven't even done because if we're this is why I wanted to share, the ways that karma ripens because, oh, do I live in a place where there's war and disease? Heck yeah, we just had a pandemic, 5 years ago, right? What kinds of things have I done to create this world that I'm living in? And as a Buddhist, can I cultivate regret for the things that I must have done? Not in a useless way, but in that very practical, utilitarian way, and clean it up. And I'm sorry, I just keep getting pinged, and I hope you're not hearing. Lord in heaven. So apologies. Um, so that was a big thing on four powers, and I do really want to stop because I think that's a lot. Um, is this something that most of you are familiar with? Have you heard this? Do you have your own experiences with four powers? Is it a practice that's alive for you? If it's not, I think I just did a commercial. Cynthia, please.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie, for teaching. I just wanna like share this comment. So I think maybe related to what she said. I guess in my case, it's harder when you think like when you mentioned pandemic. It's harder for me to see, oh, what can I change, because it's so much bigger than me. So it's when we start saying collective karma, like it's harder to define how do I reverse my imprints, maybe of a previous lifetime even. Whereas it's easier to think of, like, I've been practicing about 10 years or so now. Like there's things I've been able to change, like I first worked on anger and patience. And I could see changes, like I could see the interactions improving with certain people. So that becomes more concrete. So then you work on it a little bit more. But it's kind of difficult when you talk about the imprints of previous life, because I really, it's how do I approach when you say, go through the four powers and then really mean it. I'm not able to tell or measure how do I change that. So that's that, just sharing that, that's really difficult to approach, or how to say that I'm improving, and that I'm getting there, and purifying. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you're spot on. This is why the conversation kind of keeps coming back. Like, we want the results now. We want the results in this lifetime. It's kind of the challenge, right? And I started out a few weeks ago saying only a Buddha can see this directly. So for all of us, it's on faith. Like, it's challenging. But I do think, to your point in your comment, as we practice, we start to see things that it seems like we're seeing results from our practice. I think it's just we can't expect to see it in this lifetime, and yet we should aspire to it because it's absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible. Lord Buddha says it, I believe it. We have to get to that point ourselves. Like, we do the methods, we follow the path and try to see. Yes, fantastic. Thank you. Vajrasattva. Yes, every week, every day. Vajrasattva is good. Um, and then it does require some faith because we're not going to see it directly, and we're not necessarily going to see the results in this life. But I think that's why intellectually, is it logical? Is it internally consistent? The logic of it. Does it make sense? Does all the other things, why do I trust Lord Buddha? Do the things he taught am I able to experience some of those things as truth? Truth of suffering out of the gate, that's something I, I can verify that's reality. So there's some credibility Lord Buddha has there, and then aspects of the path. To your point, you can see improvement in your life and you can see improvement of your mind. But some of this stuff we're not going to see now. And it can be hard. It can be hard to sometimes maybe it feels overwhelming, taking responsibility for the negative things I see in the world. Um, but there's also something really empowering about that if I take responsibility, I could actually help. I could actually do something, and just purifying it in my way. We won't see necessarily the world transform overnight, but maybe we will. For all of the negative, I like to think, and this is just me, um, but thinking about karma, thinking about in the old days, I grew up where you couldn't make a phone call. It was weekends and certain hours, and that was it. Even your cell phone bill, even after cell phones, it was like hundreds of dollars. Like, you couldn't use your data. It now, like, we have this ability to communicate. Where did it come from? Karmically, where did it come from? So I think we can make by changing things in ourselves, we can see those things change. Things that seem impossible can suddenly become possible. Here we are, we're all in different places in the country, in the world, and we're sitting here together having a discussion that would have seemed impossible at one point, but it's not. Now it's possible. So I would just, yeah, put in a commercial for, do four powers on things. Do four powers, not just on the things, I think really powerful, not just on the things that we know that we've done in this life. That's important, but those are probably small potatoes. Look at the things we don't like in our world today and do four powers on those. Do four powers on it. Why do I see, maybe it's too much, but do four powers. Why do I see war? Why do I see the situation that's happening in Israel and Gaza? Why am I seeing that? Does that have anything to do with me? Does it have anything to do with me? Is there anything I can do? And actually, I'm not talking about that my doing 4 powers is going to end the war in Gaza and Israel. No, I'm saying if I do 4 powers right, if I continually do 4 powers on things like that, there won't be war anywhere in the world. So not only that, I'll live in a Buddha paradise, and so will you. So that's the promise, and I don't know, we don't always go there, but that's why we're here, I think. I think some wisdom that we have uh, is ripening for us to start to wake up that Buddhahood is possible. It sounds impossible. Perfection, I think I've said this before, the world would tell us it's impossible, don't even try. But, that's not what the Dharma says. Limitless love for every living being, no mental afflictions of our own. Nothing keeping us from being there completely for all living beings. When we get rid of all, I mean, that's an easy way to think of enlightenment. What does it look like? That kind of omniscience. Well, no blockage, no I blocking the way to connect with and to help every living being. And that's just a Bonnie thing. So, that's just me. You can disregard everything that I say, that's just me, but I think it's sort of inspiring to think that way, you know? And how is that, not what we're talking about when we talk about, working towards enlightenment? And it can feel very far away and it can feel impossible in this lifetime. But then I hope you all have moments in your personal practice where it feels very close. And then it's just vacillating between those things when it seems so impossible and so far away. And then when it seems just right there, like, oh, feeling your own heart expanding. Or, the example I gave where I did 4 powers and things changed. Of course, then, like I said, 6 months later, I don't want to set you up for, with expectations that are, maybe not realistic. 6 months later, the problem was back. But I knew I had a taste. And that's what we get. We get a taste of experience that hopefully strengthens our ability to really practice. So what I'd like to do, I do want to open it up for a few minutes, but then what I'd like to do is just a little meditation where each of us does 4 powers on something and we can pick what it is, whether it's something, it's probably easier to think of some little negative thing that we've said or done today, and that can be the object of meditation that we do 4 powers on. Or, if you want a little more of a challenge, then maybe like a habit that we have that we know, we want to get rid of. The other thing that's important once you make that resolve is to feel like you've cleaned it though, right? That's part of the refuge. It's feeling like you've cleaned it because you have done these powers and that's how karma works. So having that kind of faith, that we're not. Also, when I was a new Buddhist, I have one action in my life that I purified that like a million times. I just kept going back to it. And in a way, it was like a subtle lack of faith that I had ever cleaned it. Uh, so I would encourage you to try to feel strongly like, okay, now this I've cleaned. Um, and then if you're feeling really brave or really like ambitious, then think of some horrible thing that is happening to you that you don't feel you created. And then try to do 4 powers on that, on what you must have done to be experiencing it. So we'll do a little meditation. That'll be really personal, but I'll just sort of guide you generally. But before we do that, and I'm going to turn off my alarm, or maybe I should keep it on. No, I'm going to turn it off because I don't want to go over. But before we do that, any thoughts or questions, comments? I have to say, I really appreciate all contributions, questions, anything. It's really nice. I'm grateful that it's not just me here. That would be kind of pointless. So, and I am in the right in, I think it comes across. I'm right in the trenches with you. This is, I'm practicing too. Um, all right. So if there's nothing else, then let's do four powers. Let's kind of and it'll be a cursory version, I guess, but it'll give us a taste. So let's bring to mind what it is you want to purify. And don't feel like you have to stretch. I mean, it really can be just some little thing that you said or did today. Or it can be a habit, or again, it can be some yucky thing that you're experiencing right now. And then with your understanding of karma, of emptiness, of virtue, really allow yourself to feel regret. Just that I've made a mistake out of ignorance that's going to cause pain to myself and others. And make that real for you. And even the act of this regret, this activity of engaging in the four powers, it is an act of refuge. It's going for safe direction to the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha and the community of practitioners. We're relying on them, relying on the teachings here. And allow yourself to be as aligned with that faith as you possibly can. That faith and that confidence that these methods will help, do help, have helped. And earlier I shared that it's this intensity of emotion is one of the things that is an accelerator for karma. So if you can bring that strong regret and strong confidence and faith, strong refuge into your heart and mind, that's very powerful. And even that we are doing this right now is itself a remedy. This itself is what will help us in the future. This itself is what will purify and squash those negativities. But think of something else you can do after class as an additional remedy, some kind of makeup activity. It doesn't have to be anything big, something small that you will do and dedicate it towards purifying the object of our meditation. And then make a resolution, a strong decision that you're going to abstain from whatever act of body, speech, or mind that we're regretting right now, that we're doing poor powers on, that we're going to abstain from that in some way for some period of time that we can absolutely hold. Something honest that we can keep, a promise, a resolution we can keep. And now allow yourself to feel that karma is purified, has been purified. Just one less black pebble, one less negative karma, and one good karma, and one habit that we're forming as we engage in this practice of four powers. And may our ability to purify become a habit and stronger in us. May it increase our faith and confidence in the Buddha, in the teachings, and in ourselves. May this practice and this class, this time we've spent together, may it ripen as realizations in our own minds and hearts. May it enable us to truly be of benefit to every living being, everywhere on countless planets, countless living beings. And this is the holy wishes of all of our teachers, all of our lamas. So praying for the fruition of all of their holy wishes. This is their wish. May they all have long and healthy lives and continue to teach the Dharma. May everyone we're practicing with, all the centers of FPMT, actually any spiritual practitioner on the path, may they all have long and healthy lives. And may they all gain realizations in their own hearts and minds. And may they all benefit all living beings. And when you're ready, you can come back to the room. I think that's dedication. So I don't really have anything else. I think that's dedication. Anybody else have any comments or questions, or actually anything else they want to dedicate this time to, like family members who might be suffering, or just anything, we can dedicate. I think they're included in what we just went through, but yeah, this is why we're here, removing all those obstacles. So yeah, I guess I'll give you guys 7 minutes back if we don't have anything else. I will say also, specifically, that FPMT centers thrive, that Lama Zopa Rinpoche's incarnation gets everything they need to flourish in the Dharma and quickly start teaching and turning the wheel of Dharma, that all the FPMT centers flourish, that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has a long and healthy life. But again, I think we already have made those prayers, dedication prayers. So thank you, everyone.